I think over the last sessions we have heard a lot of, a number of energetic individuals from the sector and they went through their stories, how they started and what were the challenges and what were the success factors and how are they contributing at the moment to the economy of the country and how are they actually encouraging the individuals, the entrepreneurs and the youngsters. Today we have another similar energetic individual, Mr. Ansari. The best thing about Mr. Ansari is that he is a good friend. And I'm really proud to have him as a friend. We've been in friendship for the last 21 years now. We know each other for the last 21 years. And we started in a university. And then we witnessed each other for the last 21 years. But this guy is much more vibrant and energetic than me. I came and I stuck into the government for 15 years. But this guy, he went and then he tested the government, he tested the private sector, all the challenges with the donors, with the private sector itself, and with the public sector as well. So before we get into all those stuff, I don't know, what you're up to. I would love to start with my first question, and that will be, let us hear your background, your childhood, starting with childhood. What was your childhood, and where you spend your childhood, Ansari sir?
Thank you very much, Aimal, and likewise, I'm very honored and privileged to have a friend like Aimal Marjan. Before I come to his question, I want to tell you a little story about how I met this guy. I was young when I finished my high school. I kind of was exploring, what to do, where to go, what career path, education, and then with the computer, since it was a very new thing in mid-90s, I was really very much into computers, and I wanted to, pursue a career there. I did some, very basic stuff like DOS, and there were COBOL and this stuff at that time, but no degree program in Afghanistan. It was Taliban time. I went to Pakistan. And there was a university where most of Afghans would go in Islamabad. It was called the International Islamic University of Islamabad. I went there and I asked if there was a computer science department. They said yes. And I said, are there Afghans there? They said there's one Afghan, but it was a summertime. That Afghan was on leave, on summer vacations. And then I find his contacts, I give him a call, he invited me to his home in Peshawar. And that's how I met Aimal. And I gave him the entry test samples I had from the last year, and I actually needed his guidance on how we do that. And there was one crazy section. It was about logic. There were little boxes in different style. You have to put them together in order to get the right response. He taught me, and then he asked me like 2 questions, and then he told me, can you do the third? I did it, and he said, you can pass this test. And I did. So all the credit goes to this guy, and the reason I'm here talking to you, he has a big hand in that. The story continues, and when I went to the university, we formed the Afghan Computer Science Association. It was a student organization. We wanted to bring the people who are in computer sciences together so that we can, transfer the education. We were, both of us we didn't have much experience about this. And he asked me, you become the president. I said, no, you become the president because you're my senior.
Before we find out who was the president, let me just interrupt this guy and take him back to his childhood. Let's start with your childhood, and then we'll come who became the president at that time then.
Okay. No, there's one thing which is left. We did this, and there was a show in Peshawar, and we printed these business cards for the first time. We were coming to Peshawar in a bus, and he was sitting to the guy next to him. The guy was sitting here, I'm here, and I was sitting here. And they started talking, with each other. I told him, give him your card, give him your card. So, you know, for the first time, when you print your card, and, you know, how do you feel, you know, giving it to the first person in your life? And he was laughing, you know, smiling. So that was our little story, and we're friends since then. Coming to my childhood. I belong to a family of educationists. Most of my ancestors were educators. My father was a teacher. And the rest of the family, cousins, you know, most of them were in the education field. I was born in 1977 in Jalalabad city, and that's where I went to the primary school. But as a child, I was very calm, very naughty, you know, and I will destroy everything wherever I would see, like electronics such as radio, TV. I'll bring a screwdriver and open it to see what's inside, you know. So that's exploration. I had that always in mind, and I wanted to discover new things, you know, find out what's inside these machines, how these machines work, like the watches, how they tick, you know. So all these kind of stuff I'll do. And my father, sometimes he would be angry because I'll destroy something which is already in shape, and sometimes there would be some old stuff and he will be happy. But he would say, you're gonna become an engineer, which never happened actually. I went to a different field, but engineers at that time, you know, electronics, there was no computer sciences and stuff. But at the same time, I was like always thinking, you know, and people would call me, you're so churti, you know. Churti is the person who like kind of do what is it called, daydreaming or something?
Yes.
And I wouldn't speak much. My other brother, who's elder than me, Sadiq, he speaks a lot, and people would like him because, you know, kids who play, who talk to people, they're, you know, kind of liked by other people, and they want to spend time with them. But I would be calm, you know, doing my stuff in my own style, in my own way. So that Churti title, when I grew up, I called like, I carried the screen name Omar Churti in the MSN Messenger. So when I was working with this great man for a couple of years, I told him the story like I was, you know, I had a screen name called Omar Churti. And he would tease me sometimes, you know, whenever at Omar Churti Sange, how are you, Omar Churti? I met this guy a couple of years. I didn't see him like for 2 years. When I saw him again, he called me, oh, Omar Gangs, how are you? I said, that was Churti, it wasn't Gangs, you know. And then he goes, oh, it might be me who's Gangs. I said, that's possible, or that could be possible. So that was like a little about my childhood and the things I would enjoy. I completed until the class 5 in Jalalabad, and then we migrated for a little bit. Like every other Afghan, but there is a little joke about a country where they say they don't actually take photos for passports and IDs, you know. They just go to the photo studio and they say they buy photos because they all look alike, you know. So the Afghan life is all the same, you know. You're born and then the war starts and then you migrate and then you come back, so this is like the same story. But there are things that do different as a child, you know, so yeah, over to you.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Thank you, Omar Saab. I think the childhood is always a period where people, they go out and they explore. And you mentioned that you were exploring and you broke on a number of radios and TV. And so when in that period that you were a child, was there any incident where you actually felt that you can be a businessman in the future? Because your father said that you will be an engineer, but whether there was any traces in those days that you could become who you are at the moment?
Well, at that time, you know, later on I discovered those were not shorts actually, they were dreams. When I started growing up, and wherever I go to these international meetings, you know, where they motivate young people on youth employment, entrepreneurship, leadership, other stuff, And they would tell them, keep dreaming, keep your dream alive, and you have to dream. So I later on discovered the thinking I had always in my mind, like one of the things, when I was little, I wouldn't talk about small numbers. Like I would tell you, I told you like 20 million times that you shouldn't wear that jacket, like 20 million times, the figure. And my mom would say, may she rest in peace, she would say, this guy gonna become rich. She would say rich. But which also never happened. Like I didn't become engineer, I didn't become rich. But I was like kind of thinking about big things. So that happened. When I was very little, like 8 years or so, I went to the neighborhood to play with other kids. There was a guy who brought these crackers, you call them papor, right?
Yeah,
it's cracker, right?
Yeah.
This guy had crackers and he had a pot with the oil in it and he was cooking them. Other kids would buy them, eat them. That was my first time eating papor, the crackers, I really liked it. It was so tasty, A few days later, I went to market and I bought, a packet of these crackers. They were not cooked, I brought them home, and at home I asked my mom to help me with the pot and all, and I cooked them. All our siblings, they came together and we ate them. So what happened, I was inspired by that guy, and I said, he can eat it and he can sell it to make some money and buy more. So the next day I went to the market and bought more and cooked them and took them to the street that the kids would buy them. There were other, like, there were some in the shops, but they were not fresh, They were not as tasty as the ones I had, so they would buy them. That was like my first attempt as a child to sell something, Later on, when I became a little older, like a year later, my father said that I have a friend who's doing this, you have these ID cards, now you go to you have a plastic sealed, the cover, At that time, there were no machines like, they have a press now, they press it, and then you have your document sealed. There were no that thing. At that time, there were no machines. He had a friend who would make these cover seals, So he said you could go to him and become a shagird, which is like a student, He would mentor you and you would learn the skill. It's good, to have skills. I said, okay, that's good. I went there. The guy did it in front of me. When I did it, he really liked it. He said, you can become my shagird. And I joined this guy. And let me show you what that was. It was this thing, which I have now. There were no machines at that time. He had these two pieces of wood. You see it? Oh, how do I open that?
Okay. Thanks God. I thought he brought this thing something for another purpose, but it's good as his memories from the business. Yeah. Okay.
This is like two pieces of wood, and you see this nut and bolt. That's what we call it. I think that's also an English word. And then there is this swan. What is swan called? Yeah. English. I don't know. Maybe David would know. Okay. You put it inside here. There's another tool you should use to. Okay. Now this is ready. Do you have a card? In your pocket? Okay.
Use this one.
This is Aymal Marjan's Tazkira, and he needs to do a cover seal. That's what you call it?
Yeah.
And I'm Omar, the little Omar, in Jalalabad.
9 years or 10 years old?
I guess it was 9 or 10 years. And then I'll put it here. And get this.
Okay.
Okay. Now this is Aymal Marjan's Tazkira in a nice plastic bag. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
So this is how I started my first business. When I went to this guy, in a few months I learned how to do this. He had this nice thing, you know, made through some carpenter. When I came home, we had a lot of wood. I cut them and I did these holes, you know, and bought some stuff, you know, and prepared this. And I had my nice little table in Chari Talashi Chowk. There is a very crowded area, and people would come and I would make, you know, their cover, laminations of 19 something. I can't remember. It was like around 1980s, I guess, yeah. So yeah, that was like the two first encounter, you know, attempts.
It looks like that Omar was a businessman when he was even a much more younger Omar, and he still knows what he started while he was 9 years old and 10 years old. So this shows that you were an entrepreneur when you were at your childhood. Let's come to the entrepreneurship in next session, but at the moment, let me just take you to your hobbies and interests before we jump into a more business and serious talk about money, how to make money and how to make friends and how to make partnerships and contracts and failures and challenges. What were your hobbies and what are your hobbies and how you feel the difference when there was a young Omar at the university and there's now an entrepreneur and established businessman?
Well, exploration, that was something I really enjoyed. Going to new places, discovering new stuff, meeting new people, you know, talking to a bunch of different people. I'm not an extrovert, but I would enjoy listening to people, you know, instead of talking. So the stranger, I wasn't scared of, you know, going outside and, you know, a little far away places. I was lost a couple of times. My parents had like really difficult time because somebody would come to our house, like my aunt, and then they would go and I will secretly, you know, follow them. So these discoveries, exploration of new things, that was like one of the things that I would enjoy. When I grew up a little more, I enjoyed reading so much. I always had a library at home. I still have a library at home. But now, when I grew up, I have this very great friend, a very dear friend, Abed Ali Shah, who was my classmate. He would say, Omar has a passion for collecting books, not reading them. But I do read books from time to time. But now when the life is so busy, I would start a book and not finish it, and then I will start I would see another interesting book, and then I'll start reading that. But these days I'm mostly reading about how mind works. What are the human? I'm kind of discovering myself, how my body works, how my mind thinks, what are the difference between personality types, and you know, these are some of the things I enjoy.
So what personality are you?
Have
you ever tested yourself?
ISTJ.
Okay, okay. So let me just interrupt here because we talked about his personality. We collected a few pictures about his lifestyle, and we'll just play them here, and let's judge whether his personality is really depicted in the pictures or not. Oh, that's
That's you.
That's me with the nice mustache. I mean, that's university time.
This is when we were working on the Computer Science magazine. In 2000, Aymal and I started publishing a Computer Science magazine. For the first time, it was in Pashto and Dari languages. So this is where we are sitting. The little guy is my brother, Ghalib. Next.
Okay, next.
And this is our university campus. Great times. And
جوانی واقعاً یک چیز خوب می باشد.
This guy, he was the Deputy Minister Finance, Ministry of Finance, now in the U.S. Commercial Attaché. And these guys are both working with Ministry of, no, one of them is in London, Isan, and the other one is in MCIT. There was our cultural week, where in our university every year we had like a cultural week, and all other nationalities would have their own, and we had our own style for Afghanistan. This was a trip to Lahore, and this is very recent. I was trying this in Parman. Oh, that's Germany. It's my cousin's daughter, a very sweet girl, now very big, and this is my cousin's son. These are my two little kids, now grown up. Sohail Atal, he's 9 years now, and in Hila, who's Mariam at school, she's 8 years. So can you go back to that slide? Mariam has a personality type of Steve Jobs. And this is when I was working with Microsoft, doing translating the Microsoft Windows in Office into Pashto and Dari language, this Ministry of Communications in IT. We started a project. Microsoft sent us one CD in that big bag, and I was carrying it. It was so heavy. Okay. This is how TechNation started as an entrepreneur. It wasn't, I would do a lot of documentation. That I was painting TechNation's first office here, so preparing some paints and this some instructions to the carpenter. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. We know who Omar is and how his childhood was and when he was young, and few of the picture shows that Omar is a person that he will not only direct people, but he will really actually get into the real meat of things and get his hands dirty the way we saw in the picture as well. So you're a practical guy, Omar. Thank you very much. I think we will now go to your professional life to know more about the Omar that we know from the TechNation. Omar, if you can let us know about when actually you started your professional life and what was your first employment, how you end up into making money.
Well, making money, that was like the childhood story, and then when I was at the high school, my brother used to run a English language institute in Jalalabad, whom I helped, and then there was a guy who had a honey business, and he was very passionate about culture in books. He said, and I shared that passion with him, and he said, why not we start a library, a public library in Jalalabad, and we can give books, for rent. People could come and rent the books. I said, okay, that's a good idea, and when I'm surrounded by books, I'll be so happy, and also making some money, that will be fun. So we started this little bookstore in Jalalabad, and for a few months he did the initial investment, and I brought my books from home, and he brought his, and then we bought other books from outside. But the problem with that business was a lot of people would come, they will take books, and they will never return, especially women with burqas, We wouldn't be able to ask them, can I see your face? And then even if we were able to see their faces, but that would be difficult to find them, So it didn't work, it failed. That was the first time. The like after that childhood in the institute, And then when I was in Islamabad, one of my cousins had a big institute and educational institution in the US. He wanted to start a branch so that they're doing like educational books, curriculum and stuff. They wanted to market this in Afghanistan, in Pakistan, in India. They started a branch office and they hired me as a research assistant at that time. So that was like my first job with an organization that was established, you know. And that's how I started. And my second job was with the Ministry of Communications in IT and the Afghan Computer Science Association that we founded. They had a partnership and with Microsoft, and they started the Afghanistan Localization Program in Kabul. In 2004, I joined the Afghanistan Localization Program with the MCIT, you know about that. And from there, in 2007, I was elected as the chairman of the National ICT Alliance of Afghanistan. In 2009, I volunteered, I quit, I volunteered a political campaign with Dr. Ashraf Ghani for a couple of years. And then in 2010, started TechNation. So back to.
Let's have more discussion on when you quit the more mainstream jobs like the government or other employees and you become employer yourself. So how was this transition? If you can just give us some of your experiences, how you transitioned to have your own business. What were the feelings at that time? What were the challenges that you faced at that time? And was there anyone who inspired you actually?
Well, I started as a social entrepreneur. There was a little Omar and there is a young Omar. Young Omar started as a social entrepreneur. I like the Afghan Computer Science Association. I didn't have a salary there, but it was an amazing experience. I did not need anything else, you know, to put in my CV. So volunteering, somebody told me there is a guy who runs the Afghanistan Volunteers Association, and I was very happy. I started my career as a volunteer. I didn't, and in the experience I had, and then I joined, the first job was like a manager after that assistantship of the Afghanistan Localization Program. The experience I had was from volunteering. So that's very important. Number two, the issues with the Afghanistan situation, the transition happened to a business entrepreneur because I would always be in some sort of financial crisis. Or I would want to do a lot of things, but I wouldn't have the resources, you know, to contribute to so that I can kickstart the project. Then I thought I should have some money of my own, and then, you know, I'll be the decision maker, and then I can reinvest it in some other things. And in 2010, when I started with TechNation, and before that I had another company which did not do good. That was a language solutions company. We would do translation, software localization, and some other stuff. It failed, but TechNation, all the ideas I had, I started bringing them under one umbrella. We did it like registered as a for-profit company, although we do some of activities for non-profit, but it's going well. So that's how I transited. And in the 2 years of volunteering in politics, I realized that nothing can be done without resources. So it's very important in life to have the resources needed for your ideas to grow, you know, to nurture and develop. So that's one of the major reasons.
Talking about the failures, you mentioned that you had one company about language solutions. What was the cause of failure? And when you started with TechNation, how you actually cope with that failure? So if you can just let us know that how that failure was and then how you took out the next Omar out of that failure.
One of the major issues was I was so defocused. I was working somewhere and then running a company, trying to work on that. It didn't work. I had a full-time job, and there were so many other volunteer stuff I was doing. So it was hard, to connect with the customers, with your staff, and find a place which you can, use as your office, and then retain staff there. So that was one of the major issues. Then I decided that if I'm gonna set up my own company, I'm gonna resign and leave everything else and develop my focus around a company.
So now you have one of the successful ventures here in Afghanistan was a TechNation, involved in a number of projects and delivering a number of projects and actually helping other companies as well. So how do you see your current profession and how you associate challenges with your current company? And do you see still challenges there, or you have mastered it?
Of course, we still face challenges. I'm learning as well as an entrepreneur. 5 years is not a long time. I think for a company to really develop and grow, the first 2 years, like 2010, 2011, 2012, these were the initial years when we were kind of learning. And you were wandering around in the first year, to see what to do and how you should do it, what the service lines should be, and a lot of different other research and thinking, and all these are involved. But from 2014, TechNation started moving, and we have done quite a few activities. There's a lifeline, I can show you that. That's it will show you a lot of young entrepreneurs. When they start a business, they want to see immediate results. Overnight, nothing happens, so you have to have the passion to wait for the days. You see, this is my leadership lifeline. The horizontal line, that's the time, and then the vertical is excitement and enjoyment. You see, there are a lot of ups and downs. Below the line, the vertical line, is failures. People would call it failures, but I wouldn't call them failures. These are the lowest points, These are personal, these are emotional, these are with your life, professional and all. Like, I started this from my high school time. I was elected as president of the student union at the university, and then I completed the high school, and then quite a few things, and then my mom died. She had a blood cancer. And then from there, you see but there are different patterns. As an entrepreneur and a leader, you need to learn from your past. You need to draw your leadership lifeline so that you understand what were the issues you faced in the past, which were the good things, how they affect your emotions, and how you can better plan your future. So if you go there, the time you see in the bottom, like a long one to the bottom, those were the very difficult times in my life. But then you go up, and there are a couple of incidences. There's a death in the family, and then you see all the others are, successes. You see, you start a new project, you get a new business, and you create another success story. So that's how my life. It's like full of complications sometimes. It's very difficult to work with different people. There are breakups, between partners. There are breakups and other, and there are family deaths, and all these, they affect your life. But you need to have a better calculation of how your life goes, and then how you can plan your future, the different patterns and the activities that you can.
I think, Mr. Ansari, when we look at the graph here, it looks like that he was a successful man. I mean, if you compare the top and the bottom of the line, you see a successful Omar Ansari there with his social life, his business life, his personal life, and we would love to see same Omar Ansari for the years to come. What we will do is we'll put the a second set of the photos here, and we'll still continue exploring you, Mr. Ansari.
Sure. National ICT Alliance of Afghanistan is the first General Assembly I was chairing. You see Asmat is sitting there, Farshid, and who else? A lot of familiar, yeah, great people. This is a biotechnology lab in Germany, which I was visiting, and they were showing me. This is the IGF MAG. I'm a member of the Internet Governance Forum's Multistakeholder Advisory Group from the business community, and these are my colleagues there. This is Farshid, Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur, and this is when I solved the problem.
Celebration, huh?
Yeah, celebrating.
Yep.
And this is
what's
with
happening
the
again?
Yeah, problem.
Problem, okay.
Okay, this is the calligraphy we were doing. You know, when we were localizing software into Pashto and Dari, fonts development was one of the activities at the Afghan Computer Science Association. We hired a calligrapher, the khatat, who would do these khatati, you know, and then we would computerize it, vectorize it, and turn that into a font. You see these fonts in computer, they're what these are the initial steps.
I will just to go back to the same. I think this is one of the major milestones in the history of IT of the country. By this time, when this project was happening in 2003-04, when Mr. Ansari was leading that project, the Microsoft operating system was not able to actually understand our language, Pashto and Dari. So that was the first time where Mr. Ansari and his team actually instructed Microsoft operating system that how should it deal with our languages. So thank you very much, Ansari sir, for all that history that we made. Thank you, thank you. Okay, so let's come to a bit more serious stuff now, and that is about entrepreneurship. There, as Mr. Didar mentioned, that 2014, when everyone was leaving, or at least people were telling us that we are leaving, and then he started the grind and he started all these new ventures like Aghez and others. Why is Afghanistan is a place to start a new business? How we would love to hear from you that why one should start a new business in Afghanistan.
Well, I wouldn't call it like, I have a difference of opinion. There's a businessman and there's an entrepreneur. There's a difference. Tell me what's the difference?
Entrepreneur is the guy who takes risks, I think. Huh? You took risks. How is it?
Yeah. Entrepreneur, business is like a businessman. What they do is they go look for an investing opportunity and they put their money there and they wait for some profit. Entrepreneur looks for problems in the society and they come up with solutions. And oftentimes they're rewarded by some money and in returns. We would call it returns. So if you look for a problem and find a solution, then you're an entrepreneur. And you're passionate about it, you want to continue working on that, you do put the persistence, you have the patience, you know, because entrepreneurship is not easy, it requires a lot of difficult, times, there are hardships and a lot of. So what entrepreneurs do is to look for a problem. Our country has many challenges and problems. So I believe this is a very great and interesting place for entrepreneurs to come, identify problems, and find a solution. When you go to the App Store, you would find many apps that wouldn't make any sense at all for an Afghan. Because entrepreneurs and developers in other countries are lacking, that problem. They cannot find a problem, so so they could do a solution for. So the first thing you do is to identify a problem and then propose a solution, find a solution, and work for that. So that's what I do in Afghanistan, and I think this is a great place for entrepreneurs to try to identify and find solution. It has its own challenges. There are so many challenges, security being one, corruption being another, and not having a lot of support mechanisms for young entrepreneurs in the country, but still it's a great place to start a business in.
So when you started your business, I mean, definitely everyone has a hero. Yep. When it is to politics or to the social life. Who was your hero? Who is your hero? Who inspired you actually to get into this business and start the TechNation actually?
Well, actually, I wanted to make a difference. That was the greatest, and it will always motivate me. My passion, my the dreams and this desire to make a difference that will keep me motivated. But one of the challenges I had as a young entrepreneur or early stage entrepreneur, I did not have a mentor, a person who can guide me through the steps I would be taking in the future. I'm very glad that there are so many business incubators today. I started the first business incubator, thinking about business incubation in 2012, and before that, when I was member of the Youth Employment Network, they were talking about entrepreneurship. And that's where I learned what entrepreneurship is. I mean, the people are doing business, especially in Afghanistan. They would not go to school, but they would start a business, and they're so successful in making money because they learn it practically. But in order for you to learn what entrepreneurship is from an academic perspective, that was a very good place, the Youth Employment Network, the summits, the meetings where I learned about entrepreneurship. And then the incubation, I did some research in 2012 and had the first business incubator called Ibtikaar, established in partnership with the Ministry of Communications. Actually, it was an MCIT project, but we provided services in terms of managing the incubator for them. Ibtikaar graduated 20 startups in 2 years, in 2014 and 15 until mid-16. And some of them are playing a key role in Afghanistan's IT industry. So not having a mentor, that was a challenging. That's why it took me time to understand so many things, but there are lessons learned. A lot of things I have learned from working on a for-profit company, which I'll be happy to share.
Should entrepreneur be a leader as well, or should that person be only a manager or business think tank? Do that person should have a leadership quality in it?
Of course. Entrepreneurship is about leadership, but there are like certain differences, that you can. But a leader is like mostly like the difference between managers and leaders. Managers do not involve emotions, but leaders do. When they talk to people, they touch hearts. Leaders, and they're more worried about how they connect with people, and how they kind of achieve a common goal. So that's the leadership is about a process, and entrepreneurship is also a process, and there are goals which you need to address, but you have to have certain leadership qualities to become a better entrepreneur. When I was, let me complete that story which I started. When this facilitator told me that you're so boring, I started asking so many different people in the Sala Academy. And 3 of these were ladies and a guy from Georgia. I told them that this lady told me you're very boring. Is that true? They said, no, she's lying. And then I went to this great man, John King, you know him. I told him, John, when I speak, am I boring? He goes, Omar, there's one thing. You have a lot of passion inside you. You have dreams, you have, a lot of things and good feelings inside you. But when you speak, you have to inform your face. So bring it up, So try to practice the way you speak better, the way you, smile and talk to people so you don't look too intimidating or, things like that. The second thing he said, you should practice. This man who's around 60 or 70, he told me, I had a session in the morning on communications, and he's teaching communications for decades now. He said, in the evening, I presented my speech to the mirror. So practice is that important. It doesn't matter you have been teaching at the university on any topic for a number of years and you have a full command on the topic, but you still, when you're in front of the audiences, you have to prepare. One of my biggest issues was I would never prepare a speech because I would be so busy with the logistics, arranging the hotel and food and catering and agenda and a lot of different stuff. 5 minutes before the actual speech, I will start writing, I'm taking notes, but it wouldn't be as good as it should be. And there I started, discovering myself more. When the Sela Academy, after 10 years it finished, every one of us had to deliver a few words, like 2 minutes. There were 35 people from all these countries, Central Asia, Georgia, Azerbaijan, and Afghanistan, and Armenia. And I did my talk. When it finished, they said, yours was the best. That was at the end. At the beginning, the feedback was, you're so boring. In 10 seconds, people gonna leave you, and they wouldn't. What was the reason? I never prepared a speech.
Now, entrepreneurs, you mentioned Sharam. Entrepreneurs, they get a lot of rejections when they put their ideas out. So were there any situation where you were rejected as an entrepreneur?
Yes. When I first started TechNation, I needed a partner. I spoke with many people, my friends, family, everyone else. They would say it's a great idea, and they would be with me for a couple of days, and then they would leave. In Afghanistan, people don't tell you that I don't want to work with you. They just leave, They don't tell you yes or no, but they just leave. They make a promise, but then they don't appear, they don't show up. So that's bad, You would be waiting for somebody, you have his name written as a partner or as a contributor or as a staff, but then they disappear. So these are like rejections. Now, what I learned that if the people, for a week, 2, 3, wait. If they don't, then I assume that is a rejection. A lot of people would not believe whether TechNation would work, whether the ideas I have at the beginning would work. So my advice to the early stage entrepreneurs and would-be entrepreneurs would be to be ready for that. Nobody's interested in your idea. Nobody's gonna take your dream as their dream. There are certain people who might share the dream with you and the passion you have, but they would not take your dream as your dream unless they see the benefits. So get used to that rejection. Do not put a lot of expectations, develop expectations on people, and do not rely on people, because if you rely too much on somebody and they fall apart, they break, then you're gonna be done. You know, it's going to be difficult for you to survive.
You touch upon the dream. Can you advise our entrepreneurs, or to be entrepreneurs, that how can they keep their dreams alive?
Well, it's a tricky question. How I do it, I take notes all the time about the ideas I have. Fahim Didar was very kind enough to put the, find a very old chat with him about Agiz's name selection. I have a lot of passion for trademarks, names, and I've been working on glossaries at the Ministry of Communications and IT. I look like dictionaries this big, for words, and find these, beautiful, good-looking, and words that are pleasant to hear, So I still do that. If a new name clicks in my mind and that's beautiful, I note it down somewhere. And when it comes to ideas, I take notes, bullet points, and then I say, one day I might have time to work on this, or pass it on to somebody else, So that's how I do it. But dreams cannot be kept alive for long. Sometimes you would need to kill your dream, because that's consuming your time, energy, and it's occupying, a portion of your mind. But it's also good to have them alive if you think sometimes in the future, or at some point in the future, you're going to be able to do that.
Another important thing is that when you mentioned the feedbacks and rejections, now how important is the feedback from your customers? Different, you mentioned earlier the audience portion. Now when it comes to business, how important is your customer and their feedback to you for flourishing your business?
Your customer, Indian would say, some Indians would say, customer Bhagwan hota hai. The customer is God. That's not because they don't say it because customer is really God, but they say it because customer is so important. In a business, customer comes priority number one. You cannot mess with your customer. You should love your customer. And when you start loving your customer, you do whatever you do to retain them, to maintain the relationship with them. When it comes to business, it requires a lot more investment to make a new customer than retain an old customer. And then if you do not retain your old customer, you make them unhappy, they go around and they tell everybody else that this is a bad company, a bad business, don't do business with them. So in order for you to continue the growth of your business, you have to maintain that relationship, and you have to love your customer and provide them the services and support they need.
Perfect. So what will be another last 1-2 question of the session. You mentioned earlier that people leave. So how important and effective is it to choose your partners? And what good and bad a partner brings to your business?
Partners, look, there are certain things which are important for companies. A very good strategy is very important, but people are more important. If you cannot or do not choose people who share the passion with you, who would contribute to your business, who are good enough to support, they have the skills required. But with the skills, I mean, having a good partner would be like energy booster. For a leader, it's important to keep the followers motivated, the team motivated, but the leader, him or herself, also needs motivation. And when does that come? When you have people around you who would, make you happy and make you, guide you through. There is a say which is called reverse mentoring, which is like when an older person gets mentorship from a younger person on new technologies, for example. Your kid might be a better iPad user than you are, or they might be better, other electronics in these toys, they would be better. So a lot of older people would require some mentoring from the younger generation, from the kids even, so they can learn. So when in the team you have people who would provide you with mentoring, that's very important. Steve Jobs, I'm not sure if it's Steve Jobs' words, but I heard it that way. It says it doesn't make sense to hire smart people and then tell them what to do. So you bring people to the company in order for them to tell you how you should run your business. So that's the kind of people you need in your business. Second, investing on trust. I mean, creating an environment which is very transparent. That's very important. In any relationship, trust building is key to a successful relationship, whether it be marriage, whether it be employee-employer, whether it be a business partnership. You have to continue investing in the trust building. If that happens, because trust is not something which is linear, it doesn't change. It's like the hard graph, it goes ups and downs. And every one of us, have you heard about the bubble machine? Have you heard about bubble machine? You didn't? It's something every one of us have in our head. Some people have it very strong. When you don't smile at me, the bubble machine will tell me he hates you, When you go early from the office, the bubble machine is going to tell you, oh, he has another job, So these are some of the things which happens in the mind. You have to clear it from time to time, You have to communicate. So number one is your customer. Number two is the employees, the team. You have to give them the time. They could be little things. Somebody died, go to his house and do a prayer, attend the funeral. That adds a lot, and they would start believing you. And they would think that's like, this guy is giving me an importance, I'm important. I mean, they're giving me a value, and that's important. When I was talking with Zia yesterday, I found out he had four major complaints. And it took him 2 years to tell me. 2 years. And he had all these in his heart, and he never told me. I blamed myself because I never give him time, I never asked him, do you have a problem? I might have done that, but randomly. But I didn't have a deep conversation with him. So it's very important to have a deeper conversation, communication and coordination with your team. And that will create an environment which is based on trust, which is transparent in a lot. So that's key when it comes to partnership. Any relationship. So trust is something that you should continually invest on.
And Ansari Sahab, you were talking about bubble machine. There are 3 bubble machines, one here, one at Didar, and one in Mandozai's head. And they're looking at the watches that, okay, we are already done with the session. I think the entrepreneurs are the individuals that are responsible for their decisions. So Ansari Sahab is the person responsible for his decision. What is happening with Zia, what's happening with Mr. Bahir, he is the person. So that's why that makes him entrepreneur. So we all, as entrepreneurs, we should stand up there, and whatever we decide, whether it brings benefit for us or loss, we are the people to be blamed for or to be credited for that. So I really thank Mr. Ansari to be with us today. This guy is a person who fall and stood up a number of times in his personal life and his business life. And he really inspired and admired a number of individuals here, as we heard from Mr. Didar. And I witnessed that because I've been with him for all these 21 years, and I've seen him, and I've got a lot of inspiration from him as well in different activities that I was busy with. So Ansari Sahab, we would pray for you, and
Thank you so much.
we want you to be with us in this wonderful business world of the country, and country needs people like you. And please keep on inspiring us. Thank you very much, Ansari Sahab.